Hi, this is Rachel with Beadaholique, and in this video I want to show you how to make the Lizette earrings with Czech glass Nib-Bits and Swarovski crystal rose Montees. This is a bead woven earring, and it features two circular clusters, and the design was inspired by these Czech glass Nib-Bit beads. So I'm just going to show you them before we get started. These are 2-hole beads, and they have a wide end and a tapered end. And they kind of remind me of a kernel of corn or a slice of pie, and they have 2 holes down the side. So they're really fun to play with and really great for bead weaving. These come in lots of beautiful finishes that Czech glass beads are known for. I'll just point out a few of them. Up here we have transparent gold luster. We have matte metallic bronze iris, and there's lots of beautiful colors in this finish. We have cyan ruby Picasso. We have opaque pink luster, opaque prairie green, and matte metallic silver, just to name a few. And these beads, due to their shape, kind of naturally want to nestle into a circular pattern. So I'm going to show you how to make the companion to this earring. And for that you will need some 2-hole Nib-Bits beads in this lustrous opaque amethyst color. You'll need some Swarovski crystal rose monte beads, and this is size SS30, and the color is Crystal Paradise Shine. You'll need some Toho Demi round beads in 2 sizes. This is 11/0 and 8/0. You'll need some 4mm jump rings, some earring hooks. You'll need some fire line and a needle. You'll need some thread snips. And I'm using 2 pairs of flat nose pliers, but you can also use flat nose and round nose. So let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is cut a length of fire line thread. I cut about 2 feet and I went ahead and threaded my beading needle. And now you want to start stringing your beads. So first string 1 Nib-Bit by the inner hole at the narrow end and 1 8/0 Toho Demi round. And you'll repeat that 6 times. So it'll give you a total of 14 beads on your thread. I love the way this color of demi round matches the Nib-Bits. This color is called Lustered Hydrangea, and it's really beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to slide my beads down almost to the end of my thread, leaving a little bit of a tail. And I'm going to bring my thread around and close these beads up into a circle. And I'm going to tie a square knot. I'm going to make it a double knot to make sure it's nice and secure. All right, so now your beads are closed up into a circle, and I'm just going to sew into the adjacent couple of beads just to pull that knot into the bead and hide it. And I'm going to make sure that my thread is now coming out of one of the demi round beads. So from here, take 1 Swarovski crystal rose monte and string the first channel. If you look on the back, these beads have 2 channels, so just string straight across. I'm just going to bring that across this little circular cluster so that the rose monte is laying in the middle. And I'm going to sew into another demi round bead on the other side of the cluster. And I'm also going to sew through the adjacent Nib-Bit bead. And so now the first channel of this rose monte is strung and secured in the cluster. I'm just going to keep sewing around through the next few beads in this cluster because I want my thread to be coming out where the opening of the second channel of the rose monte is. So it looks like I'm there now, and I'm just going to poke my needle through this second channel. And now I've ended up on the other side of my cluster, and so I'm going to sew around again. Just poke my needle into one of these demi rounds and the adjacent nib bit. And pull. And now my rose monte is secured through both of its channels. So now my thread is coming out of one of these nib bits, and I'm going to step up and sew through the outer hole of this bead. And over here, I'm going to pick up two 11-0 Toho demi rounds. And I'm going to sew into the next outer hole of that adjacent nib bit. And I'm going to repeat this almost all the way around. So two more 11-0 demi rounds and through the adjacent nib bit. You're just sewing around in a circle. Okay, so when you get to the last opening between the last two nib bits, you're going to sew one 8-0 demi round instead of the two 11-0s. And sew into the adjacent nib bit. And this will form kind of a bead jump ring where you're going to attach your second circular cluster. And then I'm just going to sew around through the next few beads, and I'm going to tie off and weave in my thread tail. So I'm just going to make a little knot. And pull it nice and tight. And sew through the next couple of beads just to hide the knot. And now I'm going to cut off my thread tail. And I'm actually going to do almost the same thing on the other thread tail here. Just going to string my needle on. And this is from the beginning of this piece, so I'm just going to make a very tiny knot. Sew into the adjacent bead, which is the inner hole of this next nib bit. And now I'm going to cut off this thread tail. And now your first cluster is done. So next I'm going to show you how to make the second cluster. So I've gone ahead and cut another length of fire line, about 2 feet, and we're going to start the second cluster almost the same way we started the first. We're going to string one nib bit through the narrow side of the bead, followed by one Toho demi round bead in size 8-0, and we're going to repeat this 5 more times for a total of 12 beads for this cluster. Okay, so when you have all of your beads strung, once again, slide them down almost to the end of your thread, leaving a little bit of a tail. And just like the first time, bring them around in a circle and tie a knot. And make it a nice secure knot. And now take your thread and sew through the next couple of beads just to pull the knot inside and hide it. And again, I'm going to make sure my thread is coming out of one of the demi rounds. And at this point, I'm going to pick up another Swarovski Crystal Rose Monte and slide it down so it's sitting in the middle of the beaded cluster. And I'm going to see where my thread comes out and sew into a demi round bead on the other side. And I'm also going to let my needle go through the next Nib-Bit bead and the next demi round bead. Make sure not to get tangled. And this is a slightly smaller beaded cluster, so at this point your thread should be coming out right about where that second channel of the rose monte is. So go ahead and string through that second channel. And the rose monte will sit just a little bit above your beaded cluster. So I'm going to sew through the next couple adjacent beads to secure the rose monte in place. And sew through the next Nib-Bit, because now, like last time, you want to step up on this Nib-Bit bead and sew the opposite way through the outer hole. Over here, I'm going to pick up two 11-0 demi-round beads. They're so tiny. I'm going to sew through the outer hole of the adjacent Nib-Bit. And again, since this cluster is a little bit smaller, we're going to do something different. We also want to be able to join this cluster both to the larger cluster we just made and to the earring hook. So over here, I'm going to string one 11-0 demi-round, one 8-0, and one 11-0, and sew through the outer hole of the adjacent Nib-Bit. And now, following the beads around, I'm going to string two 11-0 demi-rounds, and again two 11-0, watch out for your thread tail, and now we're across from where we strung those 3 demi-rounds, so we're going to do that pattern again. So string one 11-0, one 8-0, and one 11-0, and sew into the adjacent Nib-Bit. And with the remaining hole between the Nib-Bits, 2 more 11-0s. So there you go, that's the second cluster. I'm going to go ahead and tie off and weave in my thread tail. Just making a little knot. And I'm going to hide the knot by sewing through the next couple of beads. I'm going to cut off my thread tail. And we started with a knot on the thread tail, so you can weave around and weave in your thread tail some, or just cut it off here. So now we're going to join these 2 clusters, and we'll do that by taking a jump ring, this is just a thin 4mm jump ring. Open that jump ring, and we're going to use this 8-0 Toho Demi round on the outer ring from the first cluster and just slide that jump ring through there. And we're also going to slide on one of the 8/0 Demi rounds on the outer ring of the second cluster that we just did. And we're just going to close this jump ring. So these 8/0 Demi rounds just create a nice natural beaded join for these two beaded clusters. Now we're going to take another jump ring, open that up with your pliers, and this one we're going to string onto the 8/0 Demi round on the other end of your second beaded cluster. This will be to join your earring hook. So just close up your jump ring. Just neaten mine up a little bit. And now take one of your earring hooks. I'm using these cool lever back earrings. So you just slide the piece onto the earring hook. So I'm going to just slide the end of the hook onto this jump ring, and it nestles right in this pre-made loop, and your earring is done. So that is how to make the Lizette earrings featuring Czech glass Nib-Bit beads and Swarovski crystal rose Montees. You can find all of these supplies at Beadaholique.com. Thanks so much for watching.